Welcome to the With Clarity and Purpose podcast with your host, Yanet Borrego. Each week, I bring you an inspiring person or message to empower you to live life on your terms so you can be who you want to be, do what you are meant to do, and have the life you deserve to have. We will provide you with practical and cutting-edge approaches to continue getting clarity and direction on your path, mastering your mindset, and gaining confidence to tap into your inner wisdom so you can live on purpose. Welcome to the first episode of With Clarity and Purpose. I am so excited to share today's episode because it's about gaining clarity. I get so many questions from my coaching clients, from friends about clarity. How to gain clarity in those spurs of moment when you get an idea, or even finding clarity on how do you know that is your purpose? How do you know that is your passion? And sometimes we have this idea of clarity like, is this thing that will come from above and suddenly out of nowhere when it hits your body and your mind, you know exactly every single element of whatever you're trying to find out. Clarity is definitely not like that. So if you have that idea of clarity, you need to let go of it right now. And even before talking about clarity, I always ask people in regards to that element that you want to find clarity for. Let's say your purpose in life. What is it? In regards to that, do you have a why? Do you have a higher intention for you trying to find clarity? And let me illustrate this with a story. I became 5 months ago, actually, I became a full-time entrepreneur and full-time coach, speaker, and trainer. Before that, I spent almost 9 years in corporate, working as an engineer, a supply chain expert, and a consultant. And even when I graduated from my chemical engineering degree and I started to work on a refinery for one of the biggest oil and gas companies, I knew something inside me. I just knew that was not it. And that's all I knew. And I started, while getting to know myself, I started to realize how passionate I was about helping people. And I started to obsess over understanding my decisions, understanding my behaviors. And then I started evolving into, by having these tools and these skills, how can I help people to do the same? How can I help people to live empowered lives and lives that they define on their own terms? Lives where they take decisions out of love, not out of fear, out of an abundance mindset, not out of a scarcity mindset. So that was my why. That was my higher purpose. My higher intention was helping people. I just knew that was it because of how I felt in my mind, in my body, and my spirit. How I was gonna get there and the format of that, the vehicle or the channel to get in there, I didn't have an idea. And throughout the years, right? So that year I learned that this is what I'm passionate about. I still don't know what to do with that at that moment. This was back in 2013 when I started my corporate career. And at that moment, I just didn't know the form it was going to adopt. I didn't even know that in the future, I was going to be a full-time entrepreneur. I just knew there was a thirst inside me that wanted to seek more in order to fulfill that purpose that I had. And while I was in corporate, right, I started taking a lot of action for me to try to understand myself. I started to take a lot of personal development trainings. I started to get certified in neurolinguistic programming, which is the language of the mind, and how we can reprogram our mind to overcome our deepest unconscious programming. I was certified with the John Maxwell team as a coach, trainer, and speaker. I actually studied pranic healing. So I started to study and take action on different fields related to my why. I studied with Tony Robbins. So I just started to collect that data in order for me to gain a better understanding of exactly what I was looking for. And that's how I gain clarity. So a lot of times when I receive the question of how do I make sure that is it? My answer is you always know the first thing that comes to your mind. And from that, you gotta be willing to take action. And not only action of like, oh, I'll do it one day. You gotta be willing to take consistent action, because that's gonna determine the quality of the data you are collecting for yourself in order to understand yourself better. And as you continue collecting more and more data, because you're taking different actions and trying to understand yourself, the quality of your decisions will be a lot better. And the clarity that you'll be getting, you'll feel more congruent about it. I knew after taking my John Maxwell team certification of being a coach, speaker, and trainer, when one of the speakers was talking about coaching in that stage with hundreds of people, I just knew that coaching was it. I just knew that coaching was gonna be one of those things that I wanted to do with people and for people. And I wanted to make of that my career. I wanted to make of that my purpose, because I knew it was it. But it wasn't until I showed up in that event and started to hear people speak, it wasn't until that moment that I didn't have an idea before, right? It wasn't until that moment that I started to gain more clarity. And it goes back to action. And that action has to have a direction. It is like I mentioned before. In order to gain clarity, you also need to define your why. What is your direction? Where are you gonna be walking towards? In my case was, I wanna help people. And ideally, I want that to be my career one day. And as I started to walk the path and take different actions, attend different events, that's when everything else, the format of what I wanted to do, started to have shape. And that's how I started to gain clarity. So a couple of tips for gaining clarity for you to be able to let go of certain limiting beliefs and be able to replace those with empowering ones. I'm going to give you a couple of tips that I'm sure is going to be super helpful and you can share with your friends and family. The first one, you got to let go of the idea that clarity is something that is going to hit you and then you'll be able to have 100% of the information. And you'll be able to have a totally clear idea of how the path is going to look like, how the format is going to look like. Clarity is something that you start gaining when you take the first step. Clarity is a journey. It's not a destination, because whenever you have your why and you start defining your goals, your smaller goals to get you closer to that why, you will start realizing that as you continue gaining clarity, you also continue seeking more clarity. So they go both hand in hand. The process never stops. The process never stops until we leave this earth. And that takes me to the tip number 2. This is a journey. Don't expect this to be a sprint. It's actually a marathon. So while you're in this marathon, take time to enjoy the journey. Take time to learn. Because as one of the NLP presuppositions say, there is no failure, only feedback. And as I mentioned, as you're walking that path and trying to gain clarity, you are getting feedback all the time. You're getting more and more data. And as you're having more data, you'll be able to have more clarity and improve the quality of your decisions. And enjoy the process. I think that's one of the most important things. And be an eternal student. The third one is be an eternal student. Be willing and open to learn as you go. I remember when I had the idea about this podcast, this was probably like 2-3 years ago. It was like 3 to 4 years ago when I had the first idea of this podcast. And in my mind, what really got me inspired to start this initiative 3 or 4 years ago, theoretically, because I didn't take action until this year, it was the idea of I wanted to share people's stories that were having a similar journey than mine, that right now they were working on seeking clarity as they were walking their own path, mainly entrepreneurs, because I know that there are a lot of people aspiring to be entrepreneurs, to create their own reality for life, to create their own business, to live on the creative zone. And because they don't have role models, they don't hear enough stories, they just never make the jump. And I wanted to collect stories of people that were going through a similar path than me, so we all could inspire others to take control of their life and do the same. And I remember just starting a list and collecting names of people that I was going to interview. And from there, this year, I actually started to take action. And I started to interview a couple of people I had in my list. And while I was interviewing one of them, he told me, Janet, you're going to have a video. You're going to have the audio clearly from the video. So why you don't start a podcast? And I was like, that makes a lot of sense. Why I didn't think of this. And it wasn't until I started to take action that the format of my initiative started to take more shape. And it was also because I was able to learn from others. We don't have never, ever 100% of the information. So to be able to learn from others is key as you continue gaining and seeking clarity. And from there, my idea of a series of videos became a series of videos and a podcast. And then from them, I was like, well, if I start a podcast, I can have all these series of videos from other people. And I can also share tidbits of information to help my audience, to help people to continue create a more empowered community. And an idea that started there, it kept evolving and evolving and evolving. And it was because I started to take action. And yes, it took me a couple of years. It took me like 3 years to take action. And now I'm doing it. And I know from this format, maybe tomorrow it continues evolving. And maybe tomorrow I find someone else who is wiser than me in this area and it evolves even more. So being an eternal student is really important. And the last one is be comfortable with uncertainty. I know this one is really challenging for all of us because we always want to know what is next. But think about it. If we always have certainty, where do we allow space for creativity. So whenever you're in a situation that you're facing uncertainty, go back and allow yourself to think, this is my time to be creative, allow and surrender to whatever is happening. Because I always tell my coaching clients, there is a lesson to be learned in every situation. And uncertainty allows you to just be open to the situation or the initiative or the project or the idea. So I think it is really important to do all of those. And now, as I finalize this episode that I hope all of you enjoyed, I would like to finalize it with one question for you. And the question that I want you to reflect on this week is, what are you seeking clarity on? Maybe it's the purpose in life, just as I was, right? Maybe it's transitioning from a career where you are right now to a career where you can live your purpose while doing that career like I'm doing now. Or maybe it's in a relationship. Maybe it's like clarity that you're seeking in a romantic relationship or with a family member. And as you're seeking clarity, I want you to think of your why. What is the higher intention that is leading for you to find that clarity? In my example, my higher intention was helping people and making of that purpose of mine my career. That was my higher intention. Every step that I took during these last 9 years, at the end of the day, it was to align to that intention. So you gotta find your direction and understand how whatever you're seeking clarity on fits into that journey of yours that you are walking towards. And when you're able to connect those, ask yourself, what are you waiting for? Take action. When are you gonna take the first step? And like I mentioned, consistent action is really important. So I hope you enjoy this episode. I will see you next week. Thank you so much for listening. And I can't wait to share the next episode. See you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening at With Clarity and Purpose. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. Sharing is caring. Please share with your friends and family so we can continue building an empowered community together. I'll see you next week.